Good afternoon, good morning. This is Mark Johnson from Loyalty360. I hope everyone is happy, safe, and well on this Tuesday afternoon. I want to welcome you back to another edition of Loyalty Live. In this series, we talk to the leaders in customer, channel, and brand loyalty about the technology, trends, best practices that impact a brand's ability to drive unique experiences, engagement, and most importantly, customer loyalty. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Kim Welther. She's a Vice President for Baesman Marketing. How are you today, Kim?
I'm good, Mark. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. For those who may not know about Baesman, can you give us a kind of high-level view of what Baesman does and how you do it and who you do it with?
Yeah, absolutely. We're really kind of a full service marketing agency. We have a division of CRM and loyalty and also kind of execution services. So we work with a lot of brands around data services, customer insights and analytics, building the strategy and then seeing that through to execution. And then we do have our own loyalty platform as well.
Okay, great. With Loyalty Live, this series, we're looking at some challenges that marketers are having, brands are having. As you know, we have small-sided meeting with brands, and they get together and talk about different challenges, opportunities they're seeing. And one of the ones that's come up most recently, obviously with COVID, tiers, how tiers are being managed, how do you proactively communicate to them is a big topic for marketers right now. What do you see as kind of a thought leader in this space? And obviously with what Baesman does and does so well, what are you seeing at a high level on tier management and customer loyalty?
Yeah, absolutely. Tier management is definitely a hot topic we're seeing right now with a lot of different brands. We're seeing it really not being a one answer fits all. Some brands right now are seeing great shopping behavior. New customers are coming in, current spending metrics are up, transaction metrics are up. But we also have another subset of customers that are seeing less engagement. And so depending on kind of your industry, depending on your metrics, we really want to look at tier management differently depending on the state of the business. And we look at each business case and those metrics to really guide kind of our decisions and our personalization and that loyalty tier based off of what we're seeing.
Okay. Are there specific challenges or opportunities you've seen from your side, from your role, some of your clients, about how to effectively manage them? Published and kind of unpublished tiers.
Yeah, I would say probably the biggest challenge we're seeing right now is resource kind of constraints. A lot of the brands are pulled in different directions, running different scenarios. We are in a pandemic. We're in the holiday season. And so some of those kind of unpublished tiers or unpublished benefits take resources and time. And so while we have desires as we go into Q4 to really do some unique experiences for customers, we're really seeing challenges around maybe those aren't the high priority right now and not being able to do some of those customer recognitions that a lot of brands really wanted and intended to do right now.
Okay. As we come to the end of the year, many brands are going through what they standardly going through. Do they extend people? Do they not extend people? What if they're close? What if they're not close? Obviously with 2020 COVID challenges that it has presented, it's kind of an odd year for many. How do you view this considering the current environment? Obviously difficult for certain individuals, customers to accumulate points, rewards. Some may have financial difficulty. So what are the risks and benefits you see with extending or downgrading tiers in programs generally?
Yeah, it's a really a hard time right now. And we're struggling, I think, with the right choice to do for the customer versus the right choice to do for the brand. And so we can look at those point and tier expirations, get with finance and look at, can we carry this liability if we decide to extend the points over? And certain brands can, but some brands right now are faced with the kind of financial struggles during the pandemic, and we can't carry that liability over. So I think if we're seeing the declines in metrics and we're not in a place where we can carry over that point liability and extend that for the customer, that's where we have a really nice lever to pull within the tiers, that we can extend their tiers, maybe continue with some downgrading messaging, but coming in with the right messaging that we understand it's a challenging time right now and we want to extend that tier. And again, we can pull that lever for a 3, 6, we can do it for 12,
Right.
But it might be a nice thing to do it just for the 3 months right now. And then we can message later if we continue to extend it.
Okay. So one of the things that we've heard is there's an idea of kind of extending tiers or potentially giving brands or kind of the customers, a discounted offer. So if they were originally going to exceed, have to get 1,000 points for this threshold, maybe you give them 100 points over 3 months. You have to accrete, right, over a period of time to get some engagement in the program. Do you see anything? So it's not kind of a full program engagement, but you're committing, they're committing. It's kind of a reciprocity. Did you see any kind of benefit in doing something like that, or how does that impact commitment?
Yeah, I think you want to be careful when, and depending on how you message it, you can message it correctly. But sometimes we want to be careful in a sensitive time when we're extending that type of tier extension and saying we're doing this because we know it's a challenging time. We're doing it as a benefit. You want to be careful when you put some promotional messaging with it too. So I think if done right, it can 100% come across the right way. You just want to make sure that you tie those together, and maybe not just the promotional and the sales, but maybe some of those softer benefits as well can come into the messaging that is feels good for the consumer as well.
Okay. So if brands decide to extend status, give away tiers for a period of time, what have you seen that works to help keep engagement from those groups, going forward? Because sometimes people could just not they wouldn't go to achieve status either way. So what do you see from a best practices perspective when a marketer looks to extend status or extend tiers for a period of time?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is that we know that when we downgrade is that we can get incremental trips by the messaging of that downgrade. And so we want to be really careful that we don't lose sight of those incremental trips and making sure that we do provide some additional benefits. I think one way in which we can do that is making sure that we're extending the tier, but saying, you know what, let's invite us to some virtual shopping events, curbside pickup. How do we get some early access for some of these benefits so that we can really incite that incremental purchase from some additional kind of benefits versus that downgrade messaging that we're traditionally used to doing?
Okay, interesting. Are there considerations that you see for specific industries, travel, airlines, maybe some entertainment entities where, macro forces are in play? Is there a communication consideration? Because a lot of it dealing with that uncertainty can be a challenge, correct?
Absolutely. And I think the travel industry is the one that's been most affected by the pandemic when we're looking at hotels, airlines, restaurants as well, where the families aren't traveling, business trips have halted. It's an important time for them to keep the communication with the customer. And I think we're
Right.
seeing that. We're seeing a lot of communication, but we're not seeing it at the kind of level in which they were communicating. They understand the sensitivity to the time that people just aren't traveling as much. But this is where I think it's important, where they'll kind of travel and loyalty programs can continue to extend that tier status, knowing that people aren't traveling as much, giving them their platinum status. But here's a place in the travel industry where those concierge services mean so much that we can kind of give some of those softer benefits where they don't cost as much financially and they can continue to keep the customers engaged.
And some of those concierge services, maybe communities as well, they have potentially a higher perceived value, for the customers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Are there other industries that you think could be challenged as well? Aside airlines, travel, maybe entertainment, or other industries you're seeing that where this could be a kind of a challenge as well, or an opportunity?
Yeah, I think restaurants is another one where I think that loyalty benefit could be really important, and making sure, people still don't want to cook all the time, but they want to do that curbside pickup. They want to have the restaurants being there for them in a time where they want that.
Right.
And how can we kind of get some of those services, those white glove type of services within the restaurant industry as well?
Okay. And you kind of touched on it earlier. Communication is a big challenge for brands as well. How do you advise marketers, brands to communicate a tier change or extension in that process to their customers, especially if they're at risk or maybe not at risk? What are some best practices around communication?
Yeah, I think we want to still continue that kind of customer communication. And this is really that time where that personalization strategy can help guide us. We should continue the downgrading messaging to know that this is a part of the standard loyalty program, but that can also be followed with the communication of, you know what, you're in a downgrade status, but we're going to extend you through the next 6 months at your top tier status. And I think this is the time where we make that connection and that personalized messaging and extend the tier whenever it is possible for all tiers if we can.
Okay. And what about email communications? Customers asking about tiers potentially. What are customers saying to brands, and how might that be different right now during COVID than other times? And how should brands kind of respond in kind?
Yeah, I think this is really a trying time where we want to make sure that we have that sensitive hat on. And whenever a customer is reaching out to our call center or email or trying to get help, we have to be sensitive to that. And we want to make sure that if we're getting a customer at our call centers or at the customer service representatives, this is the time where if we can accommodate a customer request, we really should. And we really should encourage that loyalty engagement and making sure that we're doing the right thing for them.
Okay. What about brands who may not have a tier, either kind of a formal tier structure, even obviously there's tiers based on personalization, as you touched on earlier. If they're interested in pursuing that in the future, are there a pieces of advice, or one piece of advice you would give to them about how they can execute that in a successful manner?
Yes, absolutely. Now is the time. If you don't have a tier, to be looking at the data and seeing if it makes sense. With so many new customers on the file for a lot of brands, it's important that we put a tier and we put some kind of exclusive benefits in right now so that they can start getting those benefits. They can see the potential of a shipping benefit or increased reward earning and really continue to build that brand loyalty and make sure those new customers that we're seeing continue to engage with the brand. And there's a lot of great loyalty benefits out there that once a customer starts getting them, they're going to be coming back.
Okay, interesting. When you kind of talked about new customers on file, one of the things we've heard is that some of these entities, hotels potentially with frontline workers, people that may not traditionally, they may be quarantined, so they're new customers, but communication with them may be a little different. Have you seen any of that as well? Just people coming onto a file that they may not be a traditional customer, and they may not be engaging in the same way. And if so, how do brands proactively manage that?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a challenge. But I have seen a couple of brands where the frontline workers or the teachers, where they're getting exclusive benefits for them and just recognition and thanking moments. And I think it's important wherever we can do that to make sure that we're giving that personalized experience. So I don't think there's ever going to be a downside to that. The challenge is going to be how do we execute it and how do we make sure that we've got that right recognition in place.
Okay. And what would you suggest to brands, to marketers that are, seeking to optimize tiers within their program?
Um, Gosh, I think from an optimization perspective, I think it's always important to make sure that we're looking at the data. So when we built the tiers, usually we plan a split breakout, we plan P&Ls around what we can do there. I think it's important to make sure that we see those tiers doing what we need them to do. And if we found that the tiers are too obtainable right now, then we really need to make sure that we're stretching customer spend to make the program work effectively. So I think at any time, whether you've just launched, whether you're looking to launch a tier, always making sure that you're going to the data, watching that customer spend, and having the right amount of benefits that are looking to see that they're spending more than they did prior to the launch of a tier.
Okay, great. When you look at kind of the back end tiers, segmentation versus kind of a traditional published front end tiers, as that are more customer facing and understood, is there a risk to customer facing tiers? If certain individuals perceive they may be being treated differently than their a similar customer if they hear about it, or are there negative associations with being bucketed into tiers and levels that they may not know about?
Um, I think it's actually the opposite. I think that with loyalty, we used to see a lot of pushback in segment offers before when people would get $10 off versus $15 off. And there was a lot of customers with feedback around they had received a different offer. And a lot of that is our lifecycle marketing that we're doing. And loyalty is really a way to be very upfront, communicate our offers so that you actually have less negative kind of customer connotation with that, because it is a kind of recognized tier. It is a recognized benefit. And they know that because they're part of the loyalty program, they're part of a specific tier, that's what's going on.
Okay. Premium loyalty now is a big topic. A lot of marketers are looking at subscription programs or adding a premium tier, a paid tier that gives them some financial flexibility potentially, or hopefully kind of enhanced engagement opportunities. What are your thoughts on adding a premium tier, a subscription tier as a higher threshold tier into an existing tier structure and an existing program?
Yeah, I think any time where we can look into premium loyalty, look into those higher tiers, it's a really great benefit to the program. Wherever we can have those customer recognition moments, we really want to do those. So from a tier loan perspective, we can have those structured benefits, but also I think there's a lot of kind of surprise and delight moments that we can bring to the customer that are in those kind of premium loyalty tiers. And it's not something that you have to sign up for every year. It's not a published benefit, but it's something that we can still provide whenever the business has the resources and kind of team to do it.
Okay. As you know, some brands have kind of a longer purchase cycle. Members are purchasing less frequently, but potentially higher dollar products. So the engagement structure could be different. Other brands are buying lower cost and more frequent, trips. How do you feel product price, purchase frequency should impact a brand's tier strategy?
Yeah, I think that's very, very important for brands to consider all of those items when we're looking at that tier creation, making sure that we're monitoring the spend, watching the kind of parameters in which we thought the tiers should be. And it's not a set and forget it. We always need to be watching it. When we launch, we do our best job at guessing what the customer behavior is going to be, but that can change. And so I think that's the one thing is always monitor, always check, always watch that the tiers are doing what we expected them to do and making sure that it's obtainable. We've had brands that created a tier with the thought that 10% of the customers were going to go into that tier. Well, once it launched, we only had maybe 3% that were there. And so we didn't build a program that had kind of that perceived value that was going to get people to that tier. And so you have to make sure that as soon as you launch, you course corrected, you lower the threshold and you get more people in that top tier experience so they continue to get those benefits.
Okay. And last question, what are you seeing in regard to tiers right now? If there's a piece of advice you would give to a brand to help them optimize their tier process, or something they should consider if they're looking to tweak or even change their process around tiers, what do you see and what would you suggest to marketers?
Yeah, I would say 100% watch behaviors. Make sure the metrics are trending in the way we predicted. If you need to change thresholds, if you need to change benefits, I also see a lot of kind of benefits launched that maybe aren't being utilized. And how do we make sure, are people using the benefits? We have maybe a points for rewards, points for opting in, or profile completion. If those aren't getting the engagement that we want them to, then change them. Or maybe the point structure isn't right. We got to make sure that of all the benefits that we have going on, where are we making sure that they're being used? And I think that's the best piece of advice I could give any brand, is making sure that you've got the right rewards and you've got the right utilization of the customer to make sure that the program is working for you.
That makes sense. When you look at that, that's been a big consideration we've seen as well, or heard about, is that maybe my reward structure is not working. Maybe my engagement level is not working during COVID. People have changed. I mean, how do you help optimize that? Because that's going to impact tiers and purchasing as well, right? If the offers aren't relevant, if they aren't timely, if they're not engaging, are you seeing anything different going through COVID than before, or how do you optimize that?
Yeah, I think depending on where you are, if your business is in a really good place and you've got the positive metrics and the new customers, I think that's where you start to look for that additional tier build right now. If you're not seeing that and you're starting to see some fatigue, reward redemptions are getting lower, I think that's where you pull a little bit more of the levers of upgrading people who maybe are so close to a tier where you can give them that additional tier upgrade, maybe start extending some of those rewards, give them a little bit more time to redeem. Those are the two things on, depending on, again, look at the metrics, and then we've got to make the right strategies based off of what we're seeing and doing the right thing for the customer.
Okay, great. Well, Kim, thank you very much for the very concise but very impactful responses. And it definitely is very helpful to the marketers. I think this is something they're really struggling with, and looking forward to getting this out. And thanks for taking the time to talk to us today. As always, it's great talking to you.
Absolutely. Anytime. Thanks, Mark.
All right. Thank you, everyone.